Artemis Fowl is Disney's adaptation of the much-beloved book of the exact same name by Owen Colfer, and is directed by Kenneth Branagh and stars Fadea Shaw, Colin Farrell, Josh Gad and Judi Dench. Now listen, you've probably seen a million reviews telling you how bad this movie is. And I'm going to be honest, that did worry me going into the film. But I tried to go into it as open-minded as I could, because I kept thinking to myself, it's directed by Kenneth Branagh, it can't be that bad. The guy usually makes pretty decent movies, so I can't see it being that bad. Unfortunately though, I watched the movie, and all I'm going to say is this will probably be the millionth and one bad review you will see of this film, because it's not very good. I don't quite know where to start with this film. You can tell what it's trying to do, but just fails almost every aspect of the thing it's trying to set up. You can tell it's trying to be the next Harry Potter and is trying to start the next big franchise like Harry Potter was. But it just fails at the fundamental things that made the first Harry Potter so good, therefore leading to a franchise that ran on for many years after it. With the original Harry Potter, it managed to give enough time to breathe for each thing that was happening and each character. And it had a lengthy enough runtime to be able to fit all of that in. If I remember rightly, the first Harry Potter is about 2-ish hours long. I can't quite remember. But that is enough time to be able to get through all the key plot points that you need to get through, whilst making sure all the key characters get enough screen time and that you give enough breathing space for each of these separate things to happen. The problem with Artemis Fowl is the movie is only an hour and a half long, and it tries to cram in so much from the book that it just feels very cluttered. And that's another thing. I say it crams a lot in from the book, but from what I've heard, because I haven't personally read the Artemis Fowl books, but recently I've been talking to some people that I know that used to read the books as kids. And even though I say the movie tries to cram in a lot just for an hour and a half runtime, apparently the movie itself has excluded so much from the first book. There is a lot of key plot points and themes from the first book especially that this movie doesn't even address. And that baffles me. Because that's another thing. The trailers for this film looked quite promising, but there is also a lot of stuff in those trailers that isn't even in this film either, which makes me think that the original cut of this movie was probably something near 2 hours, 2.5 hours long. I don't know why it's been cut down to this length. I mean, maybe it was probably to make it seem a lot more punchier and just be a lot more manageable and accessible for, a younger audience. But that being said, the Harry Potter movies can be quite long, and yet they work for a young demographic anyway. I don't know, this movie is just bafflingly bad on so many different levels, and the runtime is just one of many reasons why it doesn't work. The only positive I can really squeeze out of this film is that the directing by Kenneth Branagh is okay. It's nothing special, but, it gets the job done in a few specific scenes. And to be honest, the movie does look pretty decent overall. The look of the movie is definitely not the worst thing about it. There are certain shots, especially when you're first introduced to the underground city where the fairies live, that does look pretty impressive. There is a lot of CGI on show, but the way it is shot in the movie it looks pretty cool, I will admit. But outside of that, that is literally the only positive thing I have to say about this film. Any cool ideas it does have just feel like wasted potential because it just rushes through things so quickly. The majority of the movie is very forgettable. Like, I feel in about a week's time I'm not going to remember anything about this movie. The main character of Artemis is not very likable. You can see that Fadea Shaw is trying, but I just really didn't like what they did with his character. And again, apparently, the way they take his character in this movie is a complete disservice to how he's portrayed in the book. Again, I don't know that 100% for sure because I haven't read the book, but from what I've heard, the version in the book is completely different to what you see in the film. And in the film, he just comes across as a cocky little shit. I'm going to be honest, it really did annoy me at first. He's kind of acts a bit like Benedict Cumberbatch's portrayal of Sherlock. But the only difference is that Benedict Cumberbatch's portrayal of Sherlock has a likable sense to him, even though he can be a dick at times. This portrayal of Artemis, he's just a straight up dick. He thinks he's the smartest kid in the room, and he knows it, therefore making him really, really unlikable. And he's got like this cocky sense to him that just makes him very hard to root for as a main character. The first half of this movie I was semi on board for. It wasn't enjoyable, but it was still watchable at the least. It was kind of one of those movies that was kind of bad in a boring sense, and, you know, the kind of film that doesn't really leave an impact on you. But I wasn't really getting anything where I was like, okay, this isn't, you know, laughably bad. And then the second half of the movie happens, and that's where you start getting introduced to certain things that on paper might work, but in execution are actually laughably bad. And the movie became a little bit more entertaining, in my opinion, because there are certain things that happen that genuinely had me laughing, and they were not supposed to be funny in the slightest. There is one small thing in particular, where the army of elves or fairies, whatever the hell they are, arrive at Fowl Manor, and the main ship lands, the door opens, and you get this really dramatic, like, pan in to Judi Dench's face as she says, in the most deadpan way possible, "Top of the morning to you." I really could not take that seriously in the slightest. I was in hysterics when that happened. I mean, I would probably say my favourite performance in the whole movie, and it's still not a good performance at that, is Josh Gad's character. I mean, everyone in the movie is pretty bad to a certain extent. Some are better than others, but like they're all different levels of bad. But Josh Gad's character is the way Josh Gad does his performance. It's almost as if he knows what kind of film he's in, and he is not taking it that seriously in a sense. Therefore, there is a little bit of enjoyment to be had with his performance. So in that sense, he's not that bad in the movie. If anything, he's actually quite entertaining when he's on screen. I still don't get his character, especially the whole thing with the jaw. That's just fucking weird. But yeah, he definitely knows what kind of movie he's in, and he's trying to make the most of it in that sense. But yeah, this movie really isn't good. This is probably the worst new release I've seen since Hellboy last year. And if you've seen my review for that film, you will know how much I hated that movie. But yeah, this movie was not good. You can kind of tell why Disney have just dumped this on Disney Plus, because they haven't done it with any of their other new releases, whether it be Mulan or, you know, Marvel's Black Widow. They've at least held them off maintaining their theatrical release status. Might not be for some time, but at least they're going to get a theatrical release at some point. Whereas this, they were just like, nah, no one cares about Artemis Fowl, let's just shove it onto Disney Plus. And it shows. This is a very messy movie that has some potential, but unfortunately just rushes through everything way too fast, or tries to cram so much into such a short runtime that it really doesn't work. Artemis Fowl, more like Aunt Mice Fowl. Yeah, get fucked. In the end, I'm going to give Artemis Fowl a 3.5. Yeah, I was thinking a 4 because of being generous, and there are certain aspects, like I said, that are laughably bad in like an enjoyable sense. But I don't think I can give it a 4. It really is not that good. And like I said, I tried to be somewhat optimistic about this movie. I tried to go in with a little bit of an open mind, because I know what Kenneth Branagh can do. Whether it be the first Thor movie, or even, hell, the live-action Cinderella movie that he did for Disney a few years ago. That was okay. That was enjoyable. And even with like his Shakespeare adaptations, like Much Ado About Nothing or Macbeth or Hamlet, they're good. They're very well directed. But I don't quite know what's happened here. So guys, that was my review of Disney's Artemis Fowl. I hope you enjoyed this video more than I did watching the bloody movie. But yeah, if you like the video, then give it a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already. Bye.